beneath the silence. The lake was silent, save for the gentle slap of water against the side of the small fishing boat. The air carried that sharp, metallic bite that came with late autumn, when the sun hung lower and the breath of winter whispered in the trees. Marcus adjusted his line, eyes fixed on the grey surface as ripples spread from where his lure had fallen. The forested shoreline beyond swayed in a dull rhythm, red and amber leaves drifting down like slow rain. He hadn't seen another boat in weeks. Not since the storm. He'd been living out here since the broadcasts went quiet. When the world began to unravel, Marcus had taken to the lake, his father's old boat, a few supplies, and a desperate hope that whatever was consuming the land couldn't reach the water. The radio had stopped working first. Then the lights on the far shore went out. No more smoke from chimneys. No more trucks on the old bridge. Just silence. He was running low on food now, and the air had turned cold enough to sting his fingertips. It was time to go back. To see what, if anything, remained. The motor coughed before coming alive, its noise almost too loud in the vast emptiness. Marcus turned the boat toward the distant dock and began the slow return. The wind carried the scent of rot and something else, something metallic, sharp, unnatural. He didn't recognize it. As he neared the shore, his chest tightened. The familiar fishing shacks looked darker, hollow. The flags that once fluttered above the bait shop were gone. The dock was half submerged, one side ripped away as though by some violent force. He tied the boat to what was left of a piling and stepped out, boots sinking into the cold mud. The air was still. Marcus called out. "Hello?" No answer, only the hollow echo of his voice fading into the trees. The town beyond the dock lay draped in fog. Houses he once knew stood with windows open, doors hanging loose on broken hinges. There were no cars, no people, no dogs barking. Not even the crows dared to perch on the telephone wires. Something had happened here. Marcus walked the empty street, his heart pounding. Every step crunched over brittle leaves and shards of glass. He passed by the general store, where the sign now swung loosely from one chain. The shelves inside were overturned, the floor scattered with cans and broken glass. He saw what looked like claw marks along the doorframe, long, deep gouges that tore straight through the wood. At the far end of the street stood the church. Its bell tower loomed like a ghost against the dull grey sky. The door creaked open as Marcus approached. Inside, pews were overturned, hymn books scattered, and on the altar. He froze. Something was written across the wall in a dark, dried smear. The letters jagged and uneven. "Do not stay after dark." Marcus stepped back slowly, the cold sinking deeper into his bones. Somewhere beyond the church, in the mist that rolled down from the hills, came the faint sound of movement, soft, deliberate, dragging. It wasn't the wind. And as the last of the daylight faded from the sky, Marcus realized he was no longer alone. The last traces of daylight bled into the horizon, leaving the sky bruised purple and gray. Marcus stood at the church door, breath visible in the growing cold. The fog thickened around the town like smoke, muffling every sound except the slow, rhythmic thump that seemed to echo from somewhere down the main street. He gripped the handle of a broken shovel he'd found inside the church, not much of a weapon, but enough to feel less exposed. He strained his ears. The sound wasn't footsteps. It was too heavy, too wet. Marcus moved slowly, keeping to the edges of buildings. The smell of decay was stronger now, like spoiled meat and damp earth. He passed the old diner where the windows were smeared from the inside with something dark. The chairs were overturned, plates still on tables as if everyone had vanished mid-meal. The clock on the wall had stopped at 3:17. The sound came again, closer this time. He ducked behind a parked pickup truck, its windshield shattered. The air was so still that he could hear his heartbeat in his ears. The fog moved in faint, restless patterns, curling around corners and swallowing the road ahead. Then he saw it. At first, Marcus thought it was a person, someone stumbling through the mist. But as it drew closer, its shape shifted. Too tall. Too thin. The way it moved was wrong, its limbs bending with a slow, deliberate grace that didn't seem human. It stopped near the church and tilted its head, as though sniffing the air. Marcus froze. He didn't dare breathe. The thing let out a low, rasping hiss. It sounded wet, like air forced through a throat filled with water. Then, in one strange, jerking motion, it turned and drifted back toward the forest beyond the town. He waited. 1 minute. 2. 5. Nothing. When the silence returned, Marcus crept toward the edge of town. His mind raced, the gouges on the door frames, the message on the church wall, the smell. He didn't know what had happened to the people, but he was sure now, something else was here. He reached the old hardware store, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside. The floorboards groaned beneath him. Dust hung in the air like a fine mist. He found a flashlight behind the counter, flicked it on, and swept the beam across the aisles. Tools. Batteries. A hunting knife. He grabbed what he could fit into his bag. Then he noticed the back door. It was open, not kicked in, not broken. Just open. The fog drifted in from outside, thick and heavy. And in the middle of the threshold, something lay half buried in the dirt. He knelt down. It was a radio. One of the handheld kinds used by fishermen and rescue crews. He picked it up and turned the dial. Nothing but static. Then, faintly, a voice, so weak he could barely make it out. Stay inland, repeat, not safe. The message repeated once, then the static swallowed it whole. Marcus's pulse quickened. Someone was alive. Somewhere. He turned off the flashlight and moved back toward the front window, careful not to make a sound. But when he peered out into the fog, the road that led out of town was gone, swallowed entirely by the mist. And standing at the center of where it had been, silhouetted against the white void, were 3 figures. Motionless. Watching. Marcus backed away slowly, the radio clutched tight in his hand. Then, from outside, came a sound that shattered the silence. A scream, distant, human, and full of terror. It came from the direction of the lake. The sound cut through the fog like a blade. A single, raw scream, unmistakably human. It rose, broke, and then fell into silence. The echoes lingered, bouncing off the hollow buildings of the town before fading into nothing. Marcus stood frozen in the darkened hardware store, the radio still pressed to his chest. His first instinct was to run the other way, deeper inland, away from the lake, away from whatever was happening. But that voice, That voice meant someone was still alive. He took a slow, steadying breath and slipped the knife from his belt. Just one person, he muttered under his breath. One person left. He stepped out into the fog. The cold air clung to his skin, damp and heavy. The streetlights were dead, their glass bulbs filled with condensation. The three figures he'd seen earlier were gone, though he could still feel their presence, like eyes just out of sight. The scream had come from the lake's edge, the same dock he'd landed at only an hour ago. He made his way there, moving carefully between the buildings. Every step seemed too loud, every creak of his boots like a gunshot. The fog parted briefly near the old diner sign, and he caught a glimpse of movement, something low, crawling across the road. He stopped, heart pounding. The thing was dragging itself by its arms, head lolling unnaturally to one side. It was wearing a torn fisherman's coat, the same bright orange as his own. "Hey!" Marcus hissed. "Hey, are you?" The figure stopped. Slowly, it turned its head toward him. The face was gray, skin stretched thin and dripping with water. Its eyes were gone, two dark pits where they should have been. The mouth opened and released a long, gurgling moan. Marcus stumbled back. The thing began to rise, joints cracking like wood snapping in a fire. It stood, swaying, then lunged. He turned and ran. His breath came in sharp bursts as he sprinted through the fog, past the church, past the empty houses. The thing was fast, far faster than something that broken should have been. He could hear its wet feet slapping the pavement behind him, could smell the rot in the air. He reached the dock and vaulted over a broken railing, landing hard on the planks. They groaned under his weight. The lake was a void of black glass, the reflection of the moon fractured by ripples. He turned, ready to swing the shovel, but the thing had stopped. It stood at the edge of the dock, head cocked, as if something in the water held its attention. Then, it dropped to its knees and began crawling forward, faster and faster, until it slipped soundlessly into the lake. The ripples spread wide, then vanished. Marcus stood there, shaking, staring at the water. The scream had come from here, but there was no sign of anyone. Only the sound of the boat bumping softly against the dock. Then the radio in his pocket crackled again. "Marcus!" He froze. That voice, it knew his name. "You shouldn't have come back." He snatched the radio and pressed the button. "Who is this? Where are you?" Static. "They are not gone, they are changing." The transmission broke into shrieking feedback, forcing him to drop the radio onto the dock. It hissed, sparked, and went silent. Marcus stared at it, dread twisting deep in his gut. The fog rolled in thicker now, curling like fingers over the water. And beneath the surface, he could swear something was moving. Slow, massive, circling. The planks beneath him trembled. Something brushed against the underside of the dock, heavy, deliberate. Once. Twice. Then a sound rose from below the surface, a hollow, resonant knocking, like knuckles rapping against wood. He staggered back toward the shore, never taking his eyes from the black water. And then, from the fog behind him, a woman's voice whispered, "Marcus, run." He turned, flashlight trembling in his hand, but there was no one there. Only footprints in the mud. Fresh ones. Heading into the forest. Marcus stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the footprints vanishing into the fog. They were small, a woman's, he thought, and fresh enough that the mud still glistened. The voice he'd heard by the dock still echoed in his head. Run! The pines ahead swayed gently, their tops lost in the haze. The forest had always been quiet in the fall, but this silence was unnatural, thick and suffocating. Not even the wind dared to move freely. He adjusted his grip on the knife and flashlight, then stepped into the tree line. The light from town faded almost immediately, swallowed by the mist. The deeper he went, the darker it became. Branches reached out like skeletal hands, scraping at his jacket. Each step crunched over dead needles and brittle leaves. After what felt like 20 minutes, he stopped. The air had changed. It was warmer now, and there was a faint flicker of orange light through the trees ahead, firelight. He crouched low and moved closer. The clearing opened suddenly, revealing a half-collapsed hunting cabin. The fire burned in a metal barrel out front, and beside it sat two figures, a man and a woman, both wrapped in thick coats, faces drawn and pale. They looked like they hadn't slept in days. Marcus stepped forward, slowly raising his hands. "Hey, I'm not here to hurt you." The woman turned first. Her eyes were wide, rimmed red from exhaustion. "You shouldn't be out here," she said, voice trembling. They moved through the fog. "They hunt in it." The man rose from his seat, gripping a shotgun. "Who are you?" "Marcus. I came from the lake. I thought I heard someone scream." The man's shoulders tensed. "That wasn't a person." Marcus frowned. "I saw one. It looked human, but it wasn't," the man finished sharply. "They look like us. Until you get close." The woman gestured toward the cabin. "Come inside." The fog's thickening. Inside, the air was heavy with smoke and a faint scent of something metallic, blood, Marcus realized. There were blankets, a few lanterns, and shelves stacked with canned food. In the corner lay a body, covered by a tarp. Marcus swallowed. "What happened to them?" The woman hesitated. "We don't bury anymore. The ground moves." He didn't ask what she meant. The man introduced himself as Ellis, the woman, Mara. They had been part of a small group of survivors who fled inland after the first wave. Most didn't make it. The ones who did were forced to keep moving, because the things that came out of the lake didn't stop at the shore. "They spread through the fog," Ellis said, loading shells into his shotgun. "When the mist comes, it means they are near." Marcus looked toward the window, where the fog was already pressing against the glass like a living thing. "What are they?" Mara shook her head. "We don't know. People thought it was a sickness at first. Then the bodies started walking. Then, the water changed." "The water?" "Watch it long enough," Ellis said, "and it watches back." A sudden bang rattled the wall, making all three of them jump. Something had hit the side of the cabin. Once. Twice. Mara grabbed Marcus's arm. "They found us." Ellis killed the lantern. The room fell into blackness, save for the dull glow of the fire outside. Marcus strained his ears. The sound came again, a slow dragging, like claws across wood. Then, faintly, from the other side of the wall. A voice. Please, help me. It was a child's voice. Weak, pleading. Mara whispered, don't answer it. It's not real. Marcus held his breath. The voice grew louder, closer to the window now. Please, it's cold. Then, from the opposite side of the cabin, another voice, deeper, wet and gurgling. Let me in. The walls began to creak. The fog outside pressed harder against the windows, distorting the glass. Marcus thought he saw shapes moving in it, tall, twisted silhouettes shifting just beyond sight. Ellis raised his shotgun, whispering, if they breach the door, we run. The floorboards shuddered. A shadow crossed the firelight outside. And then, as suddenly as it began, the noise stopped. The forest fell silent once more. No voices. No scratching. Just the hollow sound of wind in the trees. Ellis exhaled slowly. They are testing us, he muttered. They don't attack right away. They learn. Mara turned toward Marcus, eyes reflecting the faint glow. If you came from the lake, she said softly, you brought them with you. Outside, something heavy splashed into the mud, the sound of wet footsteps approaching again. And this time, there were many. The sound was unmistakable now, wet, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. One set. Then another. Then many. Ellis motioned toward the back door. Out the rear. Now. Mara grabbed a lantern and stuffed it into her pack, leaving it unlit. Marcus took the lead, heart hammering as the three of them crept into the back hall. The wooden floor groaned under their weight. A sound came from outside, a scraping across the front porch, like nails dragging on wood. Then the faint rattle of the doorknob. Ellis whispered, don't look back. When I say go, go. He flung open the back door, and the three bolted into the night. The fog swallowed them whole. Behind them, the cabin door splintered. A scream tore through the air, low and guttural, and something crashed inside. Marcus didn't look. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs screamed for mercy. The forest seemed alive around them. Every branch, every shift of fog, whispered movement. Shapes moved between the trees, shadows too tall, too fluid. They stopped only when Ellis signaled with his hand. The man was gasping, sweat glistening on his face. We can't outrun them, he said. We have to hide. Mara pointed toward a rise in the ground, a steep slope leading to an old fire tower barely visible through the fog. There, she said. We'll see them coming. Marcus helped her climb as Ellis covered the rear, shotgun steady. The tower's steps creaked as they ascended. The cold metal burned through Marcus's gloves. When they reached the top, the view was worse than he expected. The fog stretched endlessly in all directions, shifting like a slow, grey sea. And within it, movement. Dozens of them. Figures trudging through the mist, dragging their limbs as if wading through invisible water. Every few seconds, one of them would stop, tilt its head, and listen. Mara clutched the railing. There are more than before. Ellis gritted his teeth. They are gathering. I've seen it once before, back near the dam. Marcus turned to him. The dam. Ellis nodded. That's where it started. The government had people there. Scientists, military, said they were studying the lake water. A week later, the fog rolled in. Then the first bodies came out of it. A metallic groan echoed from below, the tower's lower steps bending under weight. "Something's climbing," Mara whispered. Ellis aimed down the ladder and fired. The blast shattered the night, and the sound echoed for miles. The recoil nearly knocked him back, but the shot connected, a shriek tore through the fog. Then silence again, until another set of hands gripped the rungs. "Two more," Marcus yelled. The tower swayed. Rusty bolts groaned. The creatures were clawing their way upward, their pale hands slick with lake water and blood. Ellis pumped another shell into the chamber. "We can't stay here." Mara looked around desperately. "The forest slopes east. There's an old ranger station about a mile out." Ellis fired again, then swung over the railing. "Move!" They slid down the opposite side of the hill, half falling through the mud and dead leaves. The fog chased them, thickening, twisting through the trees like smoke from an unseen fire. Marcus could feel it in his lungs now, cold, heavy, almost alive. The three stumbled through the dark until a faint orange glow appeared ahead. A small building, half collapsed and overgrown with ivy. The ranger station. They slammed the door behind them, pushing a filing cabinet across it. The air smelled of mildew and fuel. A cracked map of the national forest hung on the wall. Ellis leaned against the table, panting. "We need to rest. Just for a moment." Mara lit the lantern. The soft light revealed shelves lined with old radios and a wall of photographs, forests, lakes, the dam. Marcus froze at one of them. The dam, before it fell apart. Scientists in hazmat suits standing on the shore, lowering barrels marked with radiation symbols into the water. Mara's voice trembled. What were they doing? Ellis looked grim. Whatever they were trying to contain, it got out. The room fell silent. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like a living thing, quivering as if breathing. Then, faintly, the radio on the desk crackled to life. "Station 12, this is Echo Base, anyone receiving?" Ellis lunged forward. "This is Ranger Station 12. We have survivors." "Repeat, we have survivors." Static hissed for a long moment. Then, through the crackle. "Don't stay near the water. It spreads through the ground now, stay above the valley." The transmission cut abruptly, replaced by a low, distorted whisper. "Marcus!" He stumbled back, face pale. The voice continued, now deeper, layered with static, something inhuman. "We're waiting for you." The lantern flickered. Every window pane trembled. And outside, the fog began to glow. The glow seeped through the cracks in the boarded windows, soft at first, like moonlight diffused through mist, then brighter, pulsing. The walls of the ranger station shivered as if alive. Ellis switched off the lantern. "Everyone down. Don't let it touch your skin." Marcus crouched low, heart pounding. "What is it?" "Not light," Ellis said. "It's them. When they get close enough, the fog glows." Mara whispered, "There's too much of it." Outside, the forest shimmered, ghostly silhouettes swimming through the fog like fish in a milky sea. The glow grew brighter with each step they took, until the trees themselves appeared to bend away from it. Then came the noise, a deep hum, low and throbbing, like something vast stirring underground. Marcus crawled toward the window. He shouldn't have looked. Beyond the tree line, the ground was shifting. The earth rippled, soil rolling in waves like water. Between the pines, glowing fissures had begun to split the ground, leaking fog upward. The color was wrong, not white, but greenish, bioluminescent, like light shining through algae. "It's coming from below," he whispered. "It's in the ground." Ellis nodded grimly. That's what the dam was holding back. A deep crack echoed through the forest, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The floor of the ranger station trembled. A few glass jars fell from a shelf and shattered. "Basement," Mara hissed. "There's a hatch over here. We can wait it out." Ellis grabbed her arm. "No. You don't want to go under anything." "Not anymore." But the noise outside grew louder, heavy, dragging, wet. Something enormous was moving just beyond the door. The glow intensified, bleeding through the cracks. Mara's eyes darted between them. "Then what?" "We can't stay here." Marcus looked toward the back wall. "There's an access tunnel under these ranger stations, for power lines and supplies. If we follow it, it might lead away from the fog." Ellis gave a curt nod. "Find it. Fast." They tore aside a rug and pried open a rusted hatch. The smell that came out was foul, stagnant water, rot, and something metallic. Marcus swallowed hard and climbed down first, flashlight trembling in his hand. The tunnel was narrow and slick with condensation. Rusted pipes ran along the walls, dripping. The sound of the humming above was muffled down here, replaced by an intermittent rumble, like water rushing somewhere deep below. Mara followed next, then Ellis. They sealed the hatch behind them and began moving. After a few minutes, Marcus noticed something strange. The walls of the tunnel were faintly glowing too, tiny veins of green running through the metal like cracks of light. "Ellis," he whispered. "The glow's down here." The older man stopped. "That means it spread through the groundwater. Whatever this is, it's alive, moving through everything." Then the tunnel walls began to vibrate. A soft sound drifted up the passage ahead, whispering, dozens of overlapping voices. Some were clear, pleading, others were low and inhuman. Mara covered her ears. "It's in my head." Marcus shone his flashlight down the corridor. For a moment, he thought he saw people standing there, dozens of them, faces pale, eyes hollow. Then they dissolved into fog. The hum rose again, louder, deeper, until the metal around them began to groan. Steam burst from a pipe overhead. "Run!" Ellis shouted. They sprinted through the tunnel, boots slamming against wet steel. The whispers followed, growing louder, merging into a single word that echoed in Marcus's skull. "Return." They burst through a rusted service door at the end of the tunnel, emerging onto a ridge overlooking the valley. The air was freezing. Below them stretched the forest, now glowing faintly green, with rivers of mist snaking through the trees toward the lake. And in the distance, the dam. It was broken, half collapsed, water spilling through its jagged wounds. The glow pulsed strongest there, spreading out in waves. Mara sank to her knees. "It's not fog." It's spores. Ellis nodded grimly. And it's feeding. Marcus stared, his mind reeling. The dam had held something back, not a disease, but a living organism, trapped beneath the lake. Something that had waited for decades. And now, the world was breathing it in. The hum shifted again, becoming rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. From somewhere near the dam, enormous shapes began to rise, dark silhouettes moving against the light. Ellis raised his shotgun, though they were far beyond range. "Whatever it is," he said quietly, "it's waking up." The ground trembled beneath their feet. Marcus turned toward the forest. "Then we don't have long before it finds us." From behind them, back toward the tunnel, came a sudden metallic clang, the sound of the hatch swinging open. They turned. Something was climbing out. Not one of the creatures from before, this one was bigger, its body slick with glowing residue, its limbs too long, its mouth too wide. It looked at Marcus. And in a voice that was almost human, it whispered, "We remember you." The creature stood half in the tunnel, half in the night air, its dripping form framed by the sickly green light from below. The sound of the hum vibrated through the earth, rising in rhythm with the creature's breathing, if that's what it was. Its mouth hung open, jaw unhinged like a snake's, whispering Marcus's name again and again. "Marcus! Marcus!" Each syllable came out warped, echoing, as though many voices were speaking through one throat. Mara stumbled back, clutching Ellis's arm. "How does it know you?" "I don't know," Marcus breathed, but even as he said it, something deep inside him stirred, a memory buried under fear and denial. A cold room. The smell of chlorine. The sound of water dripping into metal trays. The creature's head tilted, the movement strangely familiar. Then, slowly, it stepped forward, dragging one long limb behind it. Its skin was translucent in places, and beneath it, veins pulsed with the same glowing green light that filled the valley below. "Ellis," Marcus whispered, "shoot it." Ellis raised the shotgun and fired. The blast tore through the fog, echoing across the valley. The creature staggered, a hole burning through its shoulder, but it didn't fall. It didn't even bleed. The wound shimmered, then closed, the light knitting the flesh back together like liquid glass. Mara screamed. Ellis reloaded and fired again. The creature didn't move this time. Instead, it opened its mouth wider, impossibly wide, until its jaw split down the middle. The hum surged, and a burst of glowing mist shot outward, slamming into the three of them like a wave of cold fire. Marcus hit the ground hard, gasping. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he wasn't on the ridge anymore. He was standing in a laboratory, staring through glass at a tank of black water. Inside, something was moving, slow, serpentine. And there were voices around him. Scientists. People in suits. Subject M13 responding to the compound. Cognitive recall forming despite neural isolation. His DNA shows compatibility. He blinked, and the vision shattered. He was back on the ridge. Mara was dragging him by the arm, Ellis shouting something he couldn't hear over the roar in his head. The creature was climbing the ridge after them, each movement cracking the earth beneath its weight. The glow from its body spread through the soil, making the rocks beneath their feet shimmer. "Go!" Ellis shouted. "Get to the lookout tower." Marcus stumbled after Mara, his head pounding with fragments of memory, the facility by the dam, the injections, the blood tests. Subject M13. The M wasn't random. It was his name. They crashed through the trees, branches clawing at their faces. The lookout tower loomed above, the old steel frame dark against the pulsing light of the valley. As they climbed, the air thickened with spores, glowing like green dust in the beam of their flashlight. By the time they reached the top, Ellis was coughing, blood flecking his lips. "Don't breathe too deep," Mara said, wrapping her scarf around her face. "We don't know what this stuff does." Marcus stared down into the valley. The fog had formed into swirling patterns now, spiraling around the lake like a vortex. The dam had split completely, and from its depths, something enormous was moving. He could see flashes of its outline, the curve of a ribcage, tendrils the size of trees. The entire valley pulsed in rhythm with its movement. Ellis lowered his shotgun. "That's no infection. That's a birth." Mara turned to Marcus. "You said you were out on the lake. How long?" "Since the collapse," he said. "Maybe a month." "Why?" She took a shaky breath. "Ellis, remember what the radio said? Don't stay near the water." Ellis's eyes widened. He was in the water. Marcus shook his head violently. No. No, I never. But he had. After the storm. When his boat capsized and he woke hours later, shivering, coughing up black water. He thought he'd just been lucky to survive. Mara backed away slowly. "You didn't escape it, Marcus." Her voice trembled. "You brought it with you." The words hung in the air, heavier than the fog. Marcus's skin burned where the spores had touched him. He pulled back his sleeve, faint lines of green light pulsed under his skin, following the veins like liquid fire. Ellis took a step back, shotgun raised. "What the hell are you?" "I'm still me," Marcus shouted, but his voice cracked, warping for an instant into something that wasn't quite human. The hum surged again, deeper this time, and from far below, the creature on the ridge responded, lifting its head to the tower as if hearing a command. It opened its mouth. Marcus felt something inside him stir, responding in kind, a vibration in his chest, matching the rhythm perfectly. He doubled over, screaming, clutching his head as flashes of the lab flooded back, scientists watching through glass, the black water thrashing, and his own reflection staring back at him through the tank. He hadn't just escaped the facility. He was the experiment. The hum peaked. Ellis fired. The blast threw Marcus backward, but before he could hit the ground, something caught him. The fog had risen up like hands, wrapping around his body. Mara screamed his name, but it was too late. The fog swallowed him whole. And when it cleared, he was gone. Only the hum remained, low, deep, and steady, echoing through the forest as the valley below began to move. The world was no longer solid. Marcus floated in darkness, weightless, his body neither cold nor warm. His thoughts came in fragments, blurred, distorted, like echoes bouncing through deep water. At first, there was only silence. Then, a pulse. A slow, rhythmic vibration that wasn't just around him, it was in him. The same hum that had haunted the valley now throbbed through his bones. He tried to breathe, but there was no air. Tried to open his eyes, but there was no light. Only the sensation of being suspended, half dream, half drowning. Then, images began to bloom in the dark. Not memories, but impressions. Shapes moving through the fog above ground. He saw through them, the creatures. Their minds flickered like dying stars, fragments of what they once were. A fisherman. A mother. A child. Faces he recognized from town. They were still alive inside, trapped within the fog, their consciousness stretched thin and knotted together. Their thoughts brushed against his own, whispering in unison. "Join us." Marcus recoiled, or tried to, but he no longer had limbs to move. He was part of something vast, something alive and ancient. He felt it stretching across the valley, through the soil, the roots, the water. The fog wasn't just spreading, it was thinking. He saw flashes of its birth, long before the dam, before the lake. Deep beneath the earth, in caverns sealed by time, the organism had slept. Feeding on minerals, bacteria, the faint energy of decay. Then the dam was built, and the lake rose above it, trapping it deeper still. Until the scientists came. Until he came. The memories flooded back with brutal clarity. He had volunteered for the experiment. A last-ditch effort to control what they couldn't destroy. They'd injected him with a synthesized version of the organism's spores, an attempt to merge human DNA with the entity's structure, to create an immune host. He was supposed to be the key to stopping it. Instead, he'd carried it out. He had been the breach. The fog pulsed again, and this time, he felt something else, movement. The others, the creatures, turning toward him. They recognized him. To them, he was not prey. He was the seed. A presence stirred beneath everything, enormous, old, aware. It wasn't just the fog. It was inside the fog. The true organism. A consciousness that felt endless and patient, stretching deep into the earth. It spoke, not in words, but in impressions that burned through his mind like visions. Images of oceans long gone. Forests blackened by time. Planets stripped bare. It had done this before, many times, in many worlds. It moved from world to world, feeding on life, absorbing it into itself. And now, through Marcus, it understood humanity. He saw Mara and Ellis through the fog's sight, tiny figures on the ridge, running, their heat glowing like embers. The fog around them tightened. It wanted them. Needed them. No, Marcus thought, his will straining against the pull. Leave them. The fog hesitated. For a moment, impossibly, it listened. He focused, trying to remember his body, his voice, his self. The hum inside him wavered, like a heartbeat skipping. Then, a whisper rose from the void. It wasn't the creature. It was Mara's voice. "Marcus, if you can hear me." He saw her face in his mind, mud-smeared, terrified, clutching a radio that still flickered with static. "You have to fight it. You're still human." Something inside him cracked, a fracture in the unity of the fog. He screamed, soundless but real, and for the first time, the entity recoiled. The hum broke its rhythm. He felt himself falling, ripped out of the fog's mind like a torn root. Then came pain. Cold. Gravity. He gasped as his lungs filled with air again. He was lying in the mud at the base of the ridge, soaked, shaking, human once more, or close enough to pass for it. The glow had dimmed around him. The fog above swirled violently, as if angry. Marcus stumbled to his feet, clutching his chest. The lines of green light still pulsed beneath his skin, but slower now, contained. For the first time since the collapse, he could think clearly. He wasn't free of it. But he could feel it inside him, waiting, watching. And he could feel where it was weakest. The dam. The broken heart of it all. He looked toward the valley, where the glow pulsed like a heartbeat in the dark. "You made me," he whispered, voice shaking. "Now I'm going to end you." Behind him, something moved, the fog parting as Mara appeared, rifle in hand, eyes wide with disbelief. "Marcus," she breathed. How are you alive?" He looked at her, eyes faintly glowing in the dark. "I'm not sure I am." From the valley below, the hum returned, louder now, furious. The earth trembled beneath their feet. Mara raised her weapon. "Then we'd better hurry." The wind shifted, carrying with it the cold, wet smell of the lake. And as they turned toward the dam, the fog began to move after them, like a tide rolling in to reclaim what was its own. The valley stretched out before them like a graveyard of light. The fog had thickened into rolling waves that pulsed with sickly green luminescence, creeping between the skeletal trees and the jagged remains of old buildings. The dam loomed in the distance, a colossal wound of cracked concrete and twisted steel, bleeding glowing water into the ruins below. Marcus and Mara picked their way down the ridge, every step sinking into mud that shimmered faintly under their feet. The air was heavy, humming faintly, and the smell of rot was everywhere. "This was all forest once," Mara whispered. "Now look at it. It's like the world's rotting from the inside out." Marcus didn't answer. He could feel the hum inside him resonating with the pulse of the valley. It wasn't just in the air, it was in the ground. The fog was part of a living network, roots of something massive that lay beneath the earth. "Keep close," he said, gripping the knife he'd scavenged. "If it starts moving, we don't stop." They crossed what had once been a road, now broken and walked by something that had pushed up from underneath. Here and there, shapes moved inside the fog, not the tall, predatory ones from before, but smaller things, twisted remnants of animals. A stag walked across the ridge ahead, its antlers dripping with green light, its eyes black hollows. When it opened its mouth, a soft, wet moan escaped, almost human. Mara's voice shook. "It's infecting everything." Marcus felt a pulse of heat under his skin, the fog answering him. The infection in him wasn't dormant anymore, it was reacting to the nearness of the dam. They pressed on. The closer they came, the louder the hum grew, not a single sound now, but thousands of layered tones, like a choir singing beneath the world. The dam was massive even in ruin, its spillway collapsed into a jagged pit that glowed like molten glass. Water poured through the cracks, steaming as it hit the valley floor. Mara pointed toward a structure jutting out near the base, a concrete control building still intact. "That's where they ran the containment systems," she said. "If we can get inside, there might be records, something we can use to shut it down." They approached through the thickening fog. The building's door hung open, hinges warped. Inside, everything smelled of rust and stagnant water. Emergency lights flickered weakly, powered by some half-dead generator. Marcus wiped grime from a wall of switches and gauges. All of them were flashing red. Containment failure blinked in pale orange across a cracked monitor. Mara brushed away dust from a terminal. "It's still running," she whispered. "The system's alive." Marcus moved closer, reading the lines of text scrolling across the display. They were status reports, old logs. Some corrupted, some legible. Experiment log 184B. Subject M13 shows sustained compatibility with spore strain. Partial cognitive preservation achieved. Environmental exposure below threshold. Warning, containment breach in Hydrolab sector imminent. Emergency release protocols engaged. He stared at the name. M13. His name. Mara looked up at him. "You were part of this." "I was supposed to contain it," Marcus said quietly. "They said my body could neutralize it, bind to it and shut it down." She frowned. "And instead, you spread it. Or it used me to escape." The room trembled. From somewhere deep beneath the dam came a rumbling sound, the same hum, but deeper now, almost like a voice. Mara turned to the terminal. "If we can reverse the containment sequence." "No," Marcus interrupted. "It's not mechanical anymore. The system's part of it. If we trigger it wrong, it'll spread faster." She looked at him sharply. "Then what?" "Just watch it take the world." Marcus stared at the glowing fissures creeping through the concrete floor. The light inside them pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "I can feel it," he said slowly. "It's still connected to me. It knows where I am." "Then use it," Mara said. "If it's connected to you, maybe you can control it, make it stop." He shook his head. "It's not a thing you control, Mara. It's hunger. Endless, thinking hunger. Every second I fight it, it learns from me." Before she could respond, the monitor began to flash violently. The hum outside rose to a deafening pitch. On the screen, new text appeared. Subject reacquisition detected. Host synchronization in progress. Marcus's body locked. The lines of green beneath his skin flared bright, racing up his neck, across his arms. He fell to his knees, gasping as the fog outside began to swirl toward the control room like water down a drain. Mara grabbed his shoulders. "Marcus! Fight it!" He convulsed, the veins under his skin glowing so bright they cast light on the walls. The voice of the entity filled his mind again, no longer distant, but inside him completely. "You were made to bring us back." He saw flashes of the scientists' faces again, their panic as containment failed, the water rising around them. He saw himself submerged in the tank, eyes open, lungs full of black water, and he understood, the organism hadn't escaped him. It had become him. He screamed, forcing every ounce of strength he had into resistance. The fog hesitated, swirling uncertainly, as if torn between obeying him and consuming him. Mara ripped open a panel on the wall, revealing a massive switch labeled Manual Override. "If I flip this, it floods the whole chamber," she said. "It'll destroy everything left down there, including you." Marcus looked up, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Do it." She shook her head. "No, there has to be another way." He stood, trembling. The fog outside was slamming against the walls now, desperate to reach him. If I stay alive, it spreads. If I die, it might stop. You know what you have to do. Tears welled in her eyes. Marcus, I can't. He took her hand, pressed it against the lever. You have to. The hum grew unbearable. Cracks spidered across the ceiling. Green light poured in like fire. Mara closed her eyes. I'm sorry. She pulled the lever. The world exploded in sound, metal shrieking, water roaring through the dam, concrete splitting apart. Marcus felt the rush before it hit him, a wall of freezing water surging upward, tearing through the fog, through him, through everything. As the flood swallowed him, he saw one last vision, the fog riding, dissolving, screaming without a voice. Then, silence. Darkness. For the first time since the lake fell still, the valley stopped humming. The world was quiet. For the first time in weeks, there was no hum beneath the earth, no flickering green in the fog. Only the soft rush of wind through broken trees and the distant drip of water retreating into silence. Mara awoke face down in the mud, lungs burning. She coughed up black water, shivering, her hands sinking into the soaked earth. The sky above was grey, dawn bleeding weakly through a haze of steam rising from the valley below. The dam was gone. What had once towered over the land was now a ruin of shattered stone and twisted rebar. The flood had carved a new scar through the valley, an endless river of debris, wood, and bones. The glowing light that once pulsed beneath the surface was gone. Mara sat up slowly, her whole body aching. Marcus, she croaked, scanning the valley. Marcus! Nothing. Only the gentle whisper of wind across the water. She staggered to her feet. The landscape was unrecognizable, trees uprooted, hills split open, the forest floor coated in a pale layer of dead algae that shimmered faintly in the light. The flood had stripped everything clean. For a long while, she just stood there, trembling, trying to comprehend that it was over. That maybe, just maybe, they'd stopped it. But then she saw it. Down in what remained of the spillway, water still trickled through cracks in the stone. The surface was dark, but when the wind shifted, she caught a glimpse of movement beneath it, a slow, circular ripple, as though something deep below had just turned over in its sleep. Her heart clenched. No. She stumbled down the slope, slipping on wet rock until she reached the water's edge. She crouched, staring into the murk. Marcus? Her reflection stared back, pale, hollow-eyed, streaked with grime. She waited, breath shallow. The surface trembled. A voice, faint as a sigh, drifted up from below the waterline. Mara. She staggered back. Marcus? The water rippled again, and this time she saw him. His face, pale, half submerged, eyes closed. For a moment, she thought he was floating dead just below the surface. But then his eyes opened, faintly glowing green beneath the film of water. Mara froze, her voice cracking. You didn't make it out, did you? The voice came not from his lips, but from the water itself. I stopped it. For now. Tears welled in her eyes. For now. It can't die, Mara. It changes. It waits. The wind picked up, carrying with it the faint scent of the lake, metallic and wet. The water began to swirl, slow at first, then faster, spiraling inward. You have to leave, Marcus said. Go inland. Find others. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you again. You already did. The words were not cruel, they were sad. Resigned. The spiral in the water tightened, the glow flickering again beneath the surface like lightning under glass. Mara could feel the hum returning, faint but steady. It remembers everything it consumes, Marcus whispered. Including me. She backed away, her boots sinking into the mud. Then we'll find a way to end it for good. No. The voice trembled. There's no ending it. Only surviving it. The surface of the lake bulged outward, a slow, deliberate movement like a breath being drawn. The reflection of Marcus's face began to distort, stretching, dissolving into ripples of light. Go. The word hit her like a command, not shouted, but absolute. Mara turned and ran, up the broken slope, through the shattered remains of the forest. The ground vibrated faintly beneath her feet, not the violent quake from before, but something subtler. A heartbeat. Slow. Patient. She didn't look back until she reached the ridge. Below, the new lake spread out across the valley, calm now, glassy and still. The green light had faded beneath the surface, invisible beneath the mist that hovered just above the waterline. But as she watched, a single bubble rose from the center of the lake and burst with a soft hiss. Then another. And another. Mara whispered a prayer she no longer believed in and turned toward the mountains. She didn't know where to go, only that she had to move before the sun set. Behind her, the water lapped gently at the shore, rhythmic, deliberate. Almost like breathing. And from deep beneath the surface, unseen, something vast shifted, a pulse echoing faintly through the soil, through the air, through the bones of the earth itself. The hum returned. Faint. Patient. Eternal. By dusk, Mara's legs ached and her throat burned from the climb. The forest thinned as she ascended the mountainside, giving way to stretches of stone slick with moss and rain. Below her, the valley was shrouded in mist once more, quiet, lifeless, and deceptively calm. The new lake glimmered faintly beneath the clouds like a single, unblinking eye. She didn't dare rest until the ridge flattened out into an old logging road. The wind was colder here, cutting through the trees with a low moan. She wrapped her arms around herself and pressed on, eyes scanning the tree line for movement. A faint orange glow flickered ahead. Firelight. She dropped to a crouch, inching forward until the road curved toward a small camp hidden beneath a rock overhang. 3 people huddled around a fire, 2 men and a woman, all wrapped in tattered coats, their faces hollow and pale. The smell of smoke and boiled water filled the air. Mara stepped into view slowly, hands raised. I'm not infected. They leapt to their feet instantly. One of the men, older, with a grey beard and a rifle that shook in his grip, pointed it at her. How do we know that? Mara held her ground. You'd know if I was. It glows. You'd see it in my skin. The 3 exchanged wary glances. The bearded man lowered the rifle a fraction. Where do you come from? The valley, she said. The dam. That got their attention. The woman's eyes widened. You made it out of there. Barely, Mara said. It's gone. The fog, It's gone too. For now. The younger man frowned. We saw the light from up here. Thought it was an explosion. It was, Mara said quietly. But it didn't kill it. Silence. The fire crackled softly. The older man gestured for her to sit. Name's Harlan, he said. That's Pierce and Ava. You look like hell. Mara dropped beside the fire, letting the heat sting her hands. It's been a long few days. Ava poured her a tin cup of water. We've been hiding up here since the fog rolled in. The radio's dead. We thought everyone else was gone. Mara stared into the flames. Most of them are. Harlan leaned forward. You said the fog's gone for now. What do you mean for now? She hesitated. It's changing. Slower now, but it's still alive down there. It's waiting. I think it's learning. Pierce scoffed. Learning? It's a fungus, not a person. Mara met his gaze, ice-haunted. You didn't see what I saw. She told them everything. The town. The fog. The voices in the walls. The creature that called Marcus's name. The truth about the experiments at the dam, how the infection wasn't random, how it had been engineered. By the time she finished, the fire had burned down to glowing embers. Ava whispered, then it wasn't nature that did this. It was us. Harlan rubbed a hand across his weathered face. Government's been playing God for years. Only questions how far it spread. Pierce looked toward the dark horizon. If it's still alive down there, it'll move again. You said it spreads through the water? That river runs south, straight through 3 towns before it hits the ocean. The words sank into Mara like stones. She hadn't thought about that. If the infection followed the waterways, it wouldn't stop at the valley. She stood abruptly. We need to warn them. Harlan gave a bitter laugh. Warn who? There's no one left to warn. Ava shook her head. There might be. We've picked up faint signals on the emergency band, shortwave bursts every few hours. They sound human. Mara's pulse quickened. Where from? East, Ava said. Past the old Ridge Highway. Mara didn't hesitate. Then that's where I'm going. Pierce frowned. You can't go down there alone. You said yourself it's still spreading. I'm not staying here waiting for it to find me, she said. If anyone's still alive, they need to know what's coming. Harlan studied her for a moment, then sighed. You're either brave or stupid. Both, Mara said. He stood, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. Then you're not going alone. The others exchanged uncertain looks, but in the end, they nodded. The decision was made. They packed what little they had, water, matches, a small map torn from an atlas, and extinguished the fire. As they left the camp, Mara looked back one last time at the valley below. The mist had thickened again, faintly glowing under the moonlight. From this height, the new lake looked almost peaceful. Almost. But she could feel it. Even miles away, the hum was there, faint, buried beneath the sounds of the night, but steady. It was alive. And deep beneath the calm surface of the lake, where the broken concrete of the dam sank into black water, something moved. Marcus's eyes opened. Not human anymore, not entirely, but aware. Watching. And in the stillness of the deep, he whispered one word to the dark. Soon. The road east was barely a road anymore, a scar of cracked asphalt choked by weeds and silence. The mountain air grew thinner as Mara and the others descended, the valley long since hidden behind the folds of grey morning. The world smelled like wet iron and ash. They had been walking for 2 days when they found the first sign of civilization, a highway sign half buried in moss. Ridgeview, 14 miles. Beneath it, someone had spray-painted a single word in red, run. By evening, the forest gave way to open plains. The fog had not yet reached this far, the air was clear, the sky unnervingly still. When they crested the final hill, they saw the town, intact, almost untouched. Smoke drifted lazily from chimneys. Lights flickered in windows. Ava gasped. There are people. Mara's heart stuttered. For the first time since the collapse, hope sparked in her chest. They're alive. They hurried down the slope, calling out as they neared the outskirts. A few faces appeared in doorways, pale, gaunt, wary. Children peeked from behind curtains. Someone waved from a rooftop. Pierce turned to her, grinning. You did it. You really did it. But something was wrong. The wind shifted, and Mara caught it, that faint metallic tang she thought she'd left behind. The air was damp. Too damp. They reached the town square. A generator hummed nearby, powering a crude broadcast tower cobbled together from scavenged parts. On a metal table beneath it sat a two-way radio, its signal light blinking red. A man in a leather jacket stepped out to meet them, rifle slung over his shoulder. You're not from here, he said, voice cautious. We came from the valley, Mara said. We need to warn you. He cut her off with a raised hand. We know about the valley. She froze. You know. He nodded toward the radio. We've been getting transmissions for weeks. Said the fog was gone. Said the cure worked. Mara's mouth went dry. What transmissions? The man turned to the radio, flicked a switch. Static filled the air, then a voice, faint but clear, broke through. This is Marcus Hale, broadcasting from the Ridgeview outpost. The contamination has been contained. The water is clean. It's safe to return. Mara's stomach dropped. No. The voice continued, calm, measured, his voice. If you're hearing this, don't be afraid. The fog has been purified. We can rebuild. Together. The townsfolk gathered around, smiling faintly, nodding as if reassured by the familiar cadence. Ava whispered, that's him. Marcus. Mara shook her head violently. No. It's not. He's dead. But the man with the rifle was already turning toward her. He's the one who saved us. He told us the fog would bring new life. The words hit her like ice. New life. The man smiled faintly. His teeth were too white. Too perfect. And when the firelight flickered across his skin, Mara saw it, faint veins of green pulsing beneath the surface of his neck. She stumbled back. No. The people around the square began to move closer, silent, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Ava screamed. Pierce raised his weapon, but it was too late. The townsfolk closed in, moving as one, their faces calm, serene, like worshippers before an altar. The radio crackled again, louder now. "The old world is gone," Marcus's voice said. "But this one is ours. The fog is not the end. It's evolution." Mara turned, grabbing Ava by the arm, pulling her toward the edge of town. "Run!" They fled down the road, gunshots echoing behind them. Harlan's rifle barked once, twice, before falling silent. Mara didn't look back. She couldn't. The sky was darkening again, clouds thickening over the horizon. And then she saw it, a pale mist rolling toward them across the plains, low and wide like a living tide. It shimmered faintly green in the dying light. Ava stumbled beside her, gasping. It's coming back." Mara's voice broke. "No. It never left." The radio in her pack hissed to life. Static. Then, his voice again, calm, almost tender. "You ran once before, Mara. Don't run from what you are." She froze, every muscle locking in place. Her reflection in a puddle shimmered, her eyes flickering faintly green. Ava stopped ahead of her, horrified. "Mara, your face." Mara fell to her knees, screaming, clawing at her skin as the veins beneath began to glow, the same light she'd seen in Marcus, in the fog, in all of them. "You carried me out," the voice whispered through the static. "You were the cure, Mara. And now, you're the seed." The wind howled. The fog rushed over them. The world went white. When silence returned, the plain was empty. No footprints. No movement. Only mist. And deep beneath the new groundwater, now spreading east, south, north, something stirred. A single voice, echoed by thousands, whispered into the soil, the rivers, the air itself. "We remember you." Then, as if the earth itself was exhaling, the hum began again, soft, rhythmic, endless. The dawn that followed was beautiful. And utterly wrong. The fog had learned how to live in sunlight. The end.